Welcome to Contextual Electronics. My name is Chris Gamble. Today we're going to be talking about schematics, specifically about converting your old schematics to a KiCad 5.0 schematic. And this is something that caused me a little bit of pain at the beginning, especially as I got used to it. And it's not quite, well, it's not what I expected. I'll say that. So we're going to take a look at how this works. What's really the real issue here is that we're going from a different library system. So the way that the KiCad symbol library used to work, so the stuff that goes into your schematics, the way that that used to work is basically it was a flat file. So if you created a new library, say we have this project we're going to be looking at is DOS blink input. So if I made a DOS blink input library for all the symbols that I wanted to make, it would basically be one file, and it would be, at the top there would be a bunch of entries that are basically each symbol. Now there's more portability, and you can basically switch symbols between different libraries. It's a little bit easier to move stuff around, and it's all moving towards a more atomic model like is in the footprints. All that to say, the libraries have changed, and we need to remap all of this stuff. Now this project is actually something that I believe was built in what I'm calling KiCad 3, BZR 4092, whatever it used to be. But this is about a 3 or 4 year old project at this point. So we're going to be converting it. There actually was no change between KiCad 3 and KiCad 4, but between KiCad 4 and KiCad 5, yes, your projects need to convert. So we're going to take a look at that here. So let's take a look at what we got going on here. So what I'm going to do is I basically went and I reset all this stuff in Git. We've been playing with this a little bit, so I did actually already do this once, but I'm going to do it one more time here now. We're going to open up the schematic editor, and you see here, following libraries are not found. So now what this is saying is basically in here, there is a file that said, hey, you need to be using all these libraries. These are actually the old libraries, as you see. So this is something that we can change in the listing of all the libraries that this project is looking for. That's one thing, but this actually isn't that big of a deal. What's instead going to happen, it's down here, sorry, I got to move it up, is this is the real thing, and this is the one that's going to be potentially problematic. So let's take a look at what this looks like. Schematic in this project used a different lookup method. We're going to try and map the existing symbols to the new symbol library table. So now what's going to happen is basically there is a set of symbols that are default, and specifically for things like resistors and capacitors and inductors, that's the real thing that it's going to try and map over. Now if it also has other stuff loaded, say I had the library loaded for this project already in here, right? So if I have a DOS blink input library that has specific parts that I created, okay, that's great. But it needs to first have that loaded, and then it has to try and remap that. If it does not have that remapped, it's going to basically say, okay, I found all these other components. I'm going to put them into a new directory. And that's something we're going to take a look at here. Okay, so let's just hit remap, see what happens. So, looks like, oh, here we go. Here is the project rescue helper, right? So basically it found some older stuff, and that's fine. But what it's going to basically do is try and remap these now. So you see there's a comparator LM339, there's a bunch of connector stuff, and it's going to basically say they need to be linked to a different symbol name. So basically it's going to add this rescued thing to it, and that's something that we would need to go in and change. So let's just hit OK and see what happens here. Okay, now what we can see is, yeah, so we can see some of these things as it's going through. So here we go. R and C map to device library. That makes sense, actually, because the default resistor and capacitor that are in KiCad, those are, they're very generic components, and they exist in the device library. So it basically needed to be remapped to that. Something like this, though, photodiode, that's something that I made. So that's a custom footprint that I made, and it's going to be, oh, sorry, that one is actually mapped to DOS blink input there. Okay. Sorry, so that's actually in the library that I created. And then finally, there's parts that are in the existing library. In the KiCad library has a CONN_01X01, but it's not the right style. And that's what that dialog was. And basically it's saying, okay, now that has been mapped to this rescue, right? And so what happened is, so we can just open it up now. This is what the schematic looks like. And the main thing to look for is whether there are any components in here that have a big question mark on them. So let's go through and see if there's anything that has big question marks. These are actually all the same. So if we go into each sheet, it's all the same thing. It's just a hierarchical sheet. And so there was actually no problem here. However, if we try and go into this CONNX01, so let's go into that, and let's look at the library here. we can see here that it is in the rescue library. So let's go and look at what that library actually looks like. So we're going to here, browse symbol libraries. Sorry, my stuff's a little bit messed up here. Oh, come on. There we go. Okay, same thing here. All right, so we have on the left side here, here's all the libraries that I have loaded. Some of these you'll see, so if we find a DOS blink input, that should be in here. So here's the library. These are all the ones that I created. These are specific ones that I created when I created this footprint. So I made it a photodiode one, or I moved it into this library. That's fine. This is basically a project-specific library, and that's something that happens often. However, these are now generic components that did not get loaded. And so let's go and look at this specific example here, conn_01x01. We can probably go in and find that in the connector library. But the thing is, these have all changed. So these actually, so here's a similar one, conn_0101. See, this is basically now in a different location, and it looks slightly different, and it's a different format as that first dialog told us. So what we can do is we mouse over, hit E. We can actually just go in and say change. It's going to load up all the libraries here. It only does that once. Okay. And now what we can do is basically start typing the same thing, conn_01x01. I usually choose the generic one and hit OK. And now it's just going to swap it out. Now, I usually also check to make sure that the connection is all right, but yeah, that's fine. Now, if you don't want to, you actually don't have to do any of that stuff. Now, basically, you could have your schematic live like this for the rest of time. The thing is, if you wanted to, use any of the newer footprints, or sorry, any of the newer symbols rather, if you want it to look a little bit different, if you want to, have it tied into someone else's library, or sorry, if you want to use the generic footprints, the generic symbols that someone else already has on their machine, then you might want to swap them over. The main thing to know though is that a schematic can live on its own, right? So if I email you a schematic and it has any specific parts, if I created that photodiode part, for example, even without sending you the library, it actually should show up. That's because there's a cache file that actually gets sent with all of the existing symbols in it, right? Basically, it's a portable document format. In this case, though, we're just talking about making sure that you're able to rescue all your symbols. And like I said, you can always go in and specifically replace them with the ones that are in your default libraries. So I just loaded up all of the default libraries from the KiCad install. Now, if you are having issues and you see those question mark things, so like if you see a footprint that's actually broken, then you might want to go in and go and replace it. So like I said, if we go back here, if this one actually didn't show up as this LP2980 and instead had a big question mark and there was no pins there, then you could still mouse over it, hit E, and then go in and check that this is the right, that it has a footprint and it's able to find it. If you hit validate, it says, yep, it is found here in this library. If you see a question mark, then that probably means that it's not there anymore. So we can actually take a look at what that looks like. If we go into the library again, if we go and delete that LP2980, DOS blink input rescue. So if we delete this, this is the browser, sorry. We go in the actual editor. So there's the browser symbol library, then there's the editor itself. So right click here, remove symbol, hit save. Don't worry about me, it's fine. Now this is what you might see in that case, right? So basically if your footprint doesn't exist, then it's going to look like this thing. It looks like a big question mark. If I go in here, I can at least see what the footprint was called, and then I can try and change that out for something that's similar. We can see if there's anything similar here. It looks like, yes, there is actually one in my library, but for some reason it didn't take it. We'll go OK, and now it has been replaced. So I've been actually putting off this video a little while. It actually is, it's a little bit stressful thinking about like you're breaking, if your schematics are going to break. Worst case scenario, you should be able to, if you have a bunch of weird symbols that are in your schematic, you should be able to go through the rescue process. If you see that first dialog, make sure you do that and go, and it'll put them into a specific directory. It's a little bit annoying, but at least they'll definitely be there for the future, and then you can deal with them over time and go and swap them out. I've actually gone and basically I've gone and for when I received a schematic from someone else, I was not able to rescue. I was not able to find any of the components did not map, and I had to go and replace a lot of them by manually, and that was a little annoying. But it's only going to be once, and hopefully, if your libraries are in there and loaded, then you should be able to remap no problem. Like I said, there is some documentation about this, and there's a great Renee has a great tutorial over on the KiCad forum. I'll definitely link that down below, and that's kind of a step-by-step in the FAQ section of the KiCad forum. Great resource and something that I've found really helpful. So we'll be talking more about schematic symbols and schematics themselves over here on Contextual Electronics. If you have any other questions, I'd suggest going to that forum thread and asking over there. And you can always ask on the KiCad forum. That's forum.kicad.info. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.